We're gonna talk about schedule, like building out a race schedule, or like, I can't tell if I can see better with my sunglasses on or off, or a race plan for a season. And typically this is something that you can do like during the down time in between races. So for a lot of people, that's going to be like winter season when you're focusing more on like strength and speed to get ready and get strong for like spring, summer, fall races. Other times, like if you're like me and live in Tucson and summer is actually like winter, mine is a little bit the opposite of what you guys are probably doing, because you can't run outside for very long in Tucson in the summer. So you have to be really efficient. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get my screen share happening. Let me know. Can you guys see this?
We can. Yep.
Awesome. Minimize these. I haven't done one of these for a long time, so this will be fun. Cool. Awesome. So we'll go through we'll go through two exercises, but this will cover everything from like why core values are important to what the difference is between A race, B race, C race. We'll talk about what to do if you have a partner who's also competitive and you kind of have to like navigate and schedule races around, or with, probably a better way to explain it. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm excited for this one. So season planning one by one. Knowing your core values. We all know, I talk about core values all the time. So core values are the fundamental beliefs that guide your actions, decisions, and goals. So I have a worksheet for this that I think all of you have done. So you probably know what your core values are at this point. And they can apply to different areas of your life. And your core values can be different when you're looking at them through the lens of running versus when you're looking at them through the lens of a career or family or different scenarios in life. So these are some examples of core values based off of that worksheet. Oh, no. Sorry, guys. It's fine. No, but it's okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, Mom, no, it's fine. I'm good. Thank you. Guys, I'm really sorry. Okay, core values. These are some examples. And then just a reminder of like the connection between core values and goals. So they help you with alignment and purpose. So your goals are rooted in the core values, that, you have a deeper meaning, more purpose, so much more motivating. Let's see. Oh, yeah, me too. Me too, Ren. And then consistency and commitment. So these core values help you stay consistent, help you stay committed to the goals that you set and like the races that you put on the calendar. And then there's the point about sustainable progress. So these sort of help you keep things more realistic, make it seem more sustainable. You're not looking at like a whole season at once, which can be really overwhelming. We're just, A race to B race to C race. Sometimes it's like a couple C races, B race, A race. And we can do that without compromising your life and your relationships and your well-being. Like they can all sort of like find balance within one another if we do it right. So this is the first exercise that I want to go through with you guys. And for the first 10, it's called 10, 10, 10. So the first 10 of this is we're going to take 1 minute that I'll time. And I want you guys to focus on the past goals based off of your core values and the events that you've done, the runs that you've gone on previously, and write up to 10 things that you think made that event or that race feel like a success, and like why it mattered that you did that. So I'm going to hit a timer right now. So up to 10 things, even if it's only one or two, that's fine. Like we'll just kind of use this as part of the exercise, but up to 10 things about what made past events feel like a success or made them feel important to you. So ready to go. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. But if you guys are ready, just we can probably get started. Okay, so the middle 10 of this is to think about something in the present that you're working towards, whether it's in running or in a career or a life, up to 10 things that make that goal important to you. And then we'll do another minute with this. Okay. So the third part of this exercise is rooted in the future. So I want to ask you guys to think of like the future section and like write down sort of like where you see yourself in like for this context, where you see yourself in the athletic journey and like the goals that you hope to achieve. So you can look at this from like a 3 to 5 year plan. What do you hope to achieve athletically? It could also include the kind of person you want to become through your sport, which is running, or biking, or through hiking, or whatever it is. Like, what kind of person do you want to become in the process of reaching these goals? And some of the values that you want to continue prioritizing moving forward. And we'll do one more minute of this too. Okay. Cool. So now we're going to take each of these, like everything that you've written in these 3 buckets, and kind of look for common themes or like recurring values that are appearing in the 3 sections. Um, this can take some time. So like we can take that time now, but you can also go through and like highlight the recurring themes or the common denominators, and like keeping in mind that like these should align with your core values. And if they're not specifically like exact to the core values that you've chosen before, that's okay. These might just also be core values to consider moving forward. So when we sign up for races and we start thinking about planning out a season, it's really important to have these in mind, because it's really easy to look at Instagram or Strava or look at the next UTMB race that just got acquired and think like, oh, I want to sign up for that because everyone else is doing it, or because you feel like you have to because it's what everyone else is doing, or there's a lot of different pressures that come from just like having that stuff in our face constantly. So knowing what your core values are will definitely help you sort of like narrow down the races that you're going to choose for yourself moving forward. So when choosing a race, there are three main questions to ask for any race, whether it's A race, B race, or C race. And it's, does this race reflect my core values? Will this race contribute to my overall well-being? Is it in alignment with my goals? And then does this race allow me to maintain balance with other areas of my life? So we are humans first, not just athletes. And a lot of us have jobs and families and dogs and are prepping for weddings and are, you know, transitioning careers or places that we live. Like there's a lot going on. So asking these questions are a really good way to make sure that we're just keeping things in balance. So when we do start to choose a race, some of these are some of the things to consider. So defining your goals and priorities, cool, great. This basically means that like before we even start researching races, we need to start clarifying like what we want to achieve for the season, whether it's like a personal best, is it a new challenge, or is it just like a fun experience? So kind of like knowing what those goals are will help you filter the races that align with those objectives. And then considering the race terrain and distance. So you can look at course profile, terrain maps, distance, and just make sure that they line up or match up to your strengths. And if they don't, make sure that what they offer is like in alignment with something like if you're trying to master more steep technical terrain, that would be a really cool thing to consider before you sign up for a race and kind of like knowing what you're getting into ahead of time. So like an example would be like if you value like adventure and challenge, you might want to sign up for like a 3-day stage race or a super steep mountain race, or adventure or challenge might also mean, like Erin's doing an obstacle course race next week, which is super duper cool, and it's going to be a fun challenge. So it's just subjective to what your values are, what your goals are. So these are just things to consider, which makes this very cool and like individualized to like you as athletes. Third is checking the timing and the location. So making sure that the race fits within your training schedule and that the location is convenient. So like while it's totally fine and like okay to fly to Chamonix in the summer and race UTMB races, all of like that's great. But just making sure that it's not going to overlap with school starting or wedding plans or a family reunion or a really busy week at work. Just kind of making sure that things line up. And then if you do want to keep things closer and keep it simpler, you can look at races that are closer to home. So fourth one, I think is really important. Researching the race reputation and the organization. And I shouldn't be using UTV as an example for what races to do, based off of just kind of everything that's been going on. But like checking out backyard ultras, checking out local race organizations. Like the Pacific Northwest has some like really great people running really great races, like Go Beyond Racing and I'm spacing it right now, but Jeremy's events in the Pacific Northwest are always really great. Like the Backcountry Rise Volcanic 50K, and like knowing sort of the people that run the organization, what their values are, how they show up in community. Like those are things that matter and could be things to consider when you're choosing which races to do. And then speaking of community, like you're evaluating the community and the cause of that race. So some races can be done for like a charity event. Some races can be done just to like get the community out and like get people together. Just, different things to consider. Couple more things to consider is just like matching race distance and difficulty to current fitness and being realistic about what we're doing. So like, I'm not going to sign up for a super steep technical 100 miler when I've been training for a marathon. Like that might be a stretch for me right now. And being realistic about that is important. So the next is choosing the available time for training. So if you know that you only have an hour every day, Monday through Friday, maybe 100 miler is not a good idea until you have more time to dedicate, because you were going to be doing strength, we're going to be doing mental training, we're going to be doing mobility and PT and all of these other things that will add to that, like that time bucket that we're going to need in order to like successfully finish a 100 miler. Planning around major life events and seasons. Again, if you're getting married, if you have a really busy work season coming up, if you've got a family reunion, if you know things are on the schedule, it's usually best not to just stack things right before a race. A lot of times I see this happening in the summers where it's like all of a sudden it's summer and everyone wants to be doing everything all the time with everyone. And then at the end of the summer, we start feeling really tired, really burnt out because we're just on constantly. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. And then considering recovery and downtime needs, how much time do you need to recover from a 10K? How much time do you need to recover from a 50K, etc.? The general rule of thumb here is that for every 10 miles raced, you take a day to recover. So 100 miles is 10 days, 50K is 3 to 4 days, depending on the vert, etc., etc. And then that also could be different. It could depend on stress levels, could depend on health. If you get sick after the race, if you're sick before the race. So there's different ways to individualize that for each athlete. And then you can also assess the race's impact on your other goals. So if you're doing a C race, like the pressure is going to be a lot lower. The goal is going to be a lot more flexible versus a B race where you're like prepping for the A race, and the B race is more of like a race simulation. So you're practicing fueling, you're wearing your kit, you're making sure that you're ready to go on race day. And then the A race, as we'll talk about, is like, that's what you're going for. That's kind of what we're spending all this time training for. So as you guys know, the SMART acronym for goal setting, we've gone through this before, so I'm just going to quickly go through this again, but this all ties into like how to set up your schedule for a race season. So S, specific, make sure the goal is clearly defined and understandable. There's no ambiguity. It's like pretty cut and paste here. Okay. So M, measurable, make sure it can be quantified and tracked. Achievable, something that's realistic given your abilities and available resources right now. Relevant, make sure it aligns with your values and your overall objectives. Time bound, so you've got a timeline, you can figure out where it's at on the calendar, how it fits into your actual like real life schedule, and how to not overwhelm ourselves with so much stuff to do before this. And then there's a SMARTER acronym, which is SAMARTER. So the evaluation part is just like the regularly assessing of your progress towards the goal, and then being able to make adjustments as needed, which is the readjustment. So you can adapt the goal, you can adapt the plan as necessary. Maybe something life happens, right? Something big happens that sort of derails training for a bit, and we need to adjust the schedule and we need to adjust the plan. That's fine. But being able to like evaluate and readjust as we're setting up these SMART goals is going to set you up for more success, like in the short term and the long term, because you're not going to be forcing things. All right. So this is the part that I'm really excited about. So building your season, we talk about A races, B races. We don't often talk about C races, but they are a thing. So I'm just breaking it down here. The A races are the most important races of the season. Okay. B races, they're important, but they're not the primary focus. So these are the ones where we're refining race day strategy, practicing fueling, gaining experience. And then C races are low priority. They can serve as training or tune-up events. So if if you jump into a 5K in the middle of a long run and you use the 5K as a tempo, that's a C race. The goal is not to perform at your peak level. We're just getting experience. We're practicing fueling, practicing patience, sort of like building confidence in the process. So for the A race, setting ambitious goals, but achievable. And then it could be qualifying for Boston, qualifying for New York City, getting a golden ticket, like could be, depends on the athlete, right? It's super individualized. So you should be using the SMART and SMARTER acronym for goal setting and make sure that everything is what we just talked about: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, with the evaluation and the readjustment if needed. And then in preparing for the A race, your entire training cycle is going to be focused on this A race. So the periodization of training will play into this a lot, including the strength training. So this is like, you've got your base phase, you've got your peak phase, you've got your taper phase, and making sure that the training plan is like in alignment with this to make sure that you're in the best possible position to set yourself up for success on race day. And then the recovery part is like, we're going to set aside a significant amount of recovery time, right? So like every 10 miles race is 1 day off. This can be quite a long time, depending on like if you roll an ankle at mile 60 or whatever happens. So there's more recovery after the A race than there would be after the B race or C race. So with a B race, I like to think of B races as like practicing your process goals for the A race. So you can focus on certain aspects of performance like fueling, hydrating, dialing in sodium intake and salt loss and fluid loss, practicing like mental skills, like you can practice visualization, you can practice self-talk, dialing in mantras, practicing with different playlists that might be like I know I joke around a lot about like, when in doubt, play Beyonce, but like this is the time to practice that. And so we use like B races as benchmarks in training. So it's like a little bit of a tune-up before the race. So whatever happens in the B race leading up to the A race that like goes kind of like screwy, we can dial that in before the A race comes around. And then with recovery, we're not taking off as much time as we would with the A race, since the B races is the primary focus. The recovery periods here are going to be a little bit shorter. And then the C races, so super low pressure, very flexible. This can be anything from like a neighborhood glow in the dark run to like, jumping in a all comers track meet, to like these are just like fun and about enjoying the experience and enjoying the community. And like the goal of these is to stay engaged and like get to know the community, maintain your fitness, but also just like be around other people, push yourself a little bit, have fun. This is whole thing is about enjoying the process, right? So these do not require a taper. You're just like going straight through these in your training plan. And then minimal recovery is needed. So we're not going to take too much time, if any, at all after these. Okay. And so this is one thing that I think is really important, and I use this a lot in my own life. My partner is a mountain biker, and he likes to do some like crazy stuff on his mountain bike, and I like to do stuff like on my feet. And so sometimes we have to have hard conversations and compromise and like share a calendar and figure out like, okay, if my goal is this in this time frame, we can work towards your goal in this time frame. So tips for how to navigate this, because it can be tricky, is just like keeping an open dialogue, starting it early. If you kind of go through what you're hoping to set up for a race calendar, have these conversations early. Express your reasons and your values and goals clearly. So if you're talking to a partner and you say like, well, my goal is adventure and challenge, and this is why this race is in alignment with that. And just being able to like talk through that in a way that makes sense and in a way that is meaningful to you. And then asking for feedback, right? So, like, does this work for your partner? If not, why? Maybe there's a compromise. You can discuss the impact of the race and how you feel like it'll impact your life, how it'll benefit your life, how it'll benefit your overall training. And then again, the compromises, you might have to throw in a plan B or have a backup race or an alternative if the one that you are like gunning for doesn't work out for some reason. And then the final tip here is like sharing a Google Calendar with a partner or a group of friends if you're trying to like get everyone on the same page. That's really helpful too. So just making sure that it works for everyone involved. All right. And so exercise 2 is like kind of uh more about like communicating with your partner and stuff and how to navigate this section. So what you can do here is you can pull out a sheet of paper or like a notes app on your phone or computer. And then we're going to sort of list some pros and cons in a different sort of way than what you would normally think of as like a pros and cons list. So you can list in one column, list out like potential races, and you don't have to have everything like dialed in right now. Like hypothetical races, right? So each partner should list out the races that they're considering for the upcoming season, like write down the names of them, the dates of them, and locations. And then this is where the pros and cons list comes in. So for each race, you're going to have 2 columns. In one column is the pros, where you're going to talk about like exciting location, like I can achieve this goal that I have. We can do this race together. We can see family. We can explore a new area of the country. Those would all go in the pros column. The cons column would include maybe like travel distance, potential cost, scheduling conflicts, different requirements, weather concerns, logistics, all of that goes into the cons column. And then after that, assigning weight to each pro and each con is helpful because if certain pros or cons feel really significant to you, but maybe not your partner, you can assign them a weight of like on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most important, this is a 2 or this is a 5. So you kind of know where you stand with your partner in making these decisions together. And then the next step of this is to like compare notes and have a discussion and see if there's any way that you can do the same event or if you can support one person here and one person there. I think Andrew and Kaylee do a really good job of this. Andrew was just out crewing at Volcanic and the whole day was like dedicated to getting Kaylee around the mountain, which is so cool. And like the ability to do that with your partner is so awesome because like you get to support them with everything that you've got, but then when it's their turn to support you, it's just like this really cool reciprocal friendship, reciprocal support, I guess. I don't know. And you can do it with friends, you can do it with family members, you can do it with a partner, but it's always just really cool to like show up as your like full supportive self and not have to worry about like getting your run in or focusing on like, something that might not seem super trivial at the time, but like you're there to support. So it's kind of like have to make those sacrifices sometimes, but it's always definitely worth it. So then the last part of all of this is just like making a decision based off of this discussion and deciding which races make the most sense for each partner individually or as a couple. And then if there's a tie between races, you can consider other factors like trusting your gut feeling. Like if you just don't have a good feeling about having to travel so far for a race, like trust that feeling, find an alternative. There's also different factors like long-term goals or like the overall impact of like lifestyle. Like, does it make sense to drop X number of dollars to fly to France every summer? Or does it make more sense to like stay local and focus on like these local races? So it's going to be different for everybody, but this is like a cool way to sort of figure out what matters, how you want to show up, and then also how to plan your race season. So I know I might have gone through that pretty quickly, but I'm gonna send this PDF out with notes in Slack and via email. So if you guys have any other questions, you can like reach out about them. Um, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, and we can kind of go through a Q&A if you have any questions or want to discuss anything. See, there's something. Daybreak Racing, yes. Sorry, Angie. It's like one of my favorite organizations and I could not think of it. Um, but yeah, so okay. Did I go too fast? How does everyone feel about that? Did it make sense?
Um, this is, I don't know, maybe tangential to season planning. Um, I feel like one of the things that uh, has happened to me like a decent amount despite all the best intentions, right? Is you plan things out and then it doesn't work out, right? Like you don't get to run the race because you're injured, or like I think they had to cancel Bigfoot 200 because of wildfires, or 50-mile-an-hour winds on the coast of Oregon. Um, so yeah, I'm curious, like, do you have anything specific that you think about in terms of like how you manage the idea of like there's always that chance of like needing to get flexible in your season, even though, like when I did my last big race, like if it had been canceled a week out, I would have been heartbroken. But like, how do you think about that?
I think that when you have that fitness base, um, it's best to use it. So even if the race got canceled, like hypothetically, if Orcas was canceled, we probably would have had a conversation about an FKT route or like a hard effort you could have done or a different race you might have been able to get into as an alternative. Um, although it is heartbreaking when you've booked the Airbnb, you've booked the ferry tickets, like all of these things sort of happen, but like being flexible is like the best thing that we can do in that situation. And that's like one of those things where we talk about like responding and not reacting. Cause I think my initial reaction would be like, I'm just going to start crying because I'm overwhelmed and this is heartbreaking. Right. But there are ways to navigate it and like picking out a route through the Olympics, like could have been a different alternative. But using the fitness that you have is always a really good option. And sometimes that's with a race and other times it's with like a personal time trial, you know. Yeah. But I think the other thing is too is like when you come out of like that peak phase of training and you're like going into the taper phase like Natasha's talking about here, it's like now you just need to not get sick, like control the controllables, do everything you can to like get there healthy. But there's so many things out of our control like wildfires or 50-mile-an-hour winds on the Oregon coast, things that can disrupt our plans. So having backups or just like being open to different alternatives, is my advice there. And yes, Ren needs a full body bubble wrap. So,
No,
yeah.
I really appreciate Andrew bringing that up because, like, as Kristen knows, I've been having chronic health issues. So this is like a very real concern to me. And yeah, I just kind of have my fingers crossed, but trying to do what I can. But I was kind of having those questions of like, do I need to wear a mask more often? And like, you know, obsessively antibacterial in my hands. Like, how intense do I need to be? But at the same time, I have started the first marathon I ever did. Like, I was sick the day before, and I felt actually better after the race. So I try to think of that as well, as sometimes your body can take care of itself even when it's kind of not feeling so great.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's like definitely one of those things where it's like we can mask up, we can take all the vitamins, we can sleep all the time, but that's like we have to take care of ourselves, right? Because like we're asking our bodies to do a lot and to show up for us in a lot of like different ways. And stress is stress is stress. So if your life outside of running is really stressful, if you have a crazy work project, like that's going to impact how you feel while you're running. And if you aren't listening to your body and you're running through pain, you're running through high fatigue, you're running through these chronic illnesses, chances are it's not going to go well. Right? Like you can get away with it for a certain amount of time, but it's not sustainable. So when we're choosing races, it's like, okay, if I choose a race that's 3 months from now, I know that I can make it to that race because of the life situation that I have going on currently, whatever that is. But if you're like, I'm going to choose a race a year from now, um, that gets a little trickier because you're like, okay, because then you're putting in B races into the calendar, C races into the calendar, and there's a lot more that you can't control. So a lot of it's kind of like the way we look at racing. And if you've got like a big race, we're not thinking about the whole race all at once. We're not thinking about the whole year all at once. We're breaking it into like bite-sized chunks that are like digestible. And we can like get from aid station to aid station, month to month, week to week, sometimes even day to day. So that's kind of how I like to think about that. But bottom line there is like you're eating enough, you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough sleep, you're doing mobility, you're foam rolling, and you're listening to your body. So like any weird niggles or aches and pains that come up, like we're addressing, we're being proactive, and we're not going to wait till like, the day before a 50 miler and be like, my hip really hurts and has been hurting for 4 weeks. And I just decided to talk about it now. Like, we're going to try not to do that. So putting ourselves in the position to be as successful as possible means starting with like taking care of ourselves. And I think that's something that, we do really well as athletes because we're so in tune with our bodies, and there is that connection similar to like when you're running too fast on an easy day and you can like subconsciously you're like, whoa, I need to slow down. Having that sort of connection I think is really important and will help with this whole process.
I do have a question about the C races. Is there a time during training that you recommend those?
Yeah. Usually you can do those at the beginning of a training block. So like if we were talking about like if you were signed up for, let's say, like a 50 miler, getting really, really hot, a 50 miler, you could sign up for like a couple local 5Ks, 10Ks to like get more speed right away. And that's one really cool training philosophy from Jason Koop that he uses, where like you start those training blocks fast and hard because you're fresh. And then from there, you start to like, specify your training to the terrain and the type of race that you're going to be doing. So you can do the C races earlier on. And then as they kind of like come up, like if you are going to be traveling for Christmas and there's like a holiday 5K and you're like, that looks fun. I could do that with my family. I could do that with my friends. That's totally fine to throw in as a C race. I think the way I think of C races is kind of like they've got to be fun, they've got to be flexible, and they don't have to be this like all out, like most people don't show up for a turkey trot to like set the course record. Like, unless you really need that turkey, then
That
you can go for it.
that really, really depends on your neighborhood.
Also
The
that
number of vapor flies at our local turkey trot is insane.
and split shorts. I'm sure it's similar in Portland. I feel like a lot of the road racing there is pretty intimidating. But yeah, the real fast guys come out around the holidays. So
Or whenever, when it's
or
Portland and you go to
yeah,
the White Salmon backyard half and it turns out that there's just a couple of like elite runners for this super low key half marathon.
yeah. But everyone ends up with poison ivy and poison oak. So that's the participation award at that one. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about B races? Because I know that like when we plan out these A races, having a B race or a race simulation similar to what we did, Natasha, last weekend, like those are really great for making sure that your fueling strategy works. And like if it doesn't, then we still have enough time to readjust and to keep, like practice with a new strategy.
I feel like one thing I struggle with sometimes is we're like, oh, we're gonna try and find a race to practice with, and then it's like, oh, well, none of these races are like similar to whatever absurd thing that is actually my A goal, whether that's, the terrain or whatever. Um, so how do you kind of choose between like self-supported adventure that might be more similar terrain wise, or like where you have more control over the variables and so you can maybe make it more similar to what your actual goal is, versus like race day environment, you have the start line, you have other people around you, even if it isn't quite exactly a match?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is it depends. So if you have an athlete that is like needing to build confidence, like confidence comes from evidence. So if there's like race day anxiety, then I'm gonna want athletes to race as much as possible. So whether it's like the exact same terrain as their A race or just getting on a start line to sort of like help with that that cognitive anxiety feeling, like that's going to be really helpful then. If you're training for something really steep and like you're in a really flat area, like if you're a flatlander training for Leadville, then it gets a little bit different because there are like additional exercises that we can do after the long run to like build that fatigue resistance. But then there's also the component of if you're in the middle of a training block and you're starting to lose motivation and you just like running with people sounds better than running for 6 hours alone in the mountains, being self-sufficient, then like yes, I would encourage like signing up for a race and like running with people and having stocked aid stations along the way. But if you are dialed ready, your values are in alignment with your goals, and like you're prepared to run on super steep technical terrain for 6 hours to train for a race on similar terrain, yes, like would obviously prefer that. But it's so subjective based off of like life stress, like motivation levels, anxiety levels. So I don't have a specific answer for that. It just like depends on a lot of variables.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kristen, what do you think about I'm thinking very selfishly here in these questions, but doing a C race like as we're getting closer to the race to like throw in some fun and
Yep.
I guess for me, since I wasn't able to find a B race that matched with my values, it still would be nice to do something. But the idea of just doing something for fun, like a 5K or a 10K or something,
Mhm.
before the race does seem kind of sweet, but I don't know if there's downfalls to that.
I don't think there's a downfall to that at all because I think as long as like my hope is that you show up on race day uninjured, healthy, and like stoked,
Yeah.
right? Like excited to be there. And if that means like putting on costumes and running 5K through the neighborhood ahead of time, hell yeah, I'm on board. That sounds so fun. And like the thing about running is that it's like something that we're choosing to do. Like it's such a privilege that our bodies allow us to do these hard things in these like beautiful places. And so anytime that like motivation starts to drop or questions start to come up about like, oh, should I be doing this? Do I want to be doing this? Then that's kind of like that's a really good conversation starter for like, why did we start? What are core values? How can we make this more fun? Because like longevity is the name of the game. Like I don't want anyone ever to like show up for the race and not want to be there, you know? So it's kind of like the training that goes into these big races is like the purpose and like trusting the process is the purpose, because you're becoming a different person in the pursuit of these goals. And that's the point, you know? So it's like, if you're not enjoying yourself on race day or like through the training, then like we have to tweak something somewhere. But yes, I think we should get something fun on the calendar before your 50K. That would be great. And then in terms of Andrew, I know we've talked about doing bigger goals and like building up a lot of durability and strength and doing like multi-day to like even like Barkley level like events. And I think that like that build and that season planning is a lot different than just like a 50 miler in the desert or whatever. Totally hypothetical, right? Because like Barkley is going to include orienteering. So we have to learn how to like read maps really well. We have to be good with like a compass and a paper map. And like there's more mental training that's going to go into that than just the physical training. So it gets really nuanced and like very specific depending on the race, which is super fun. And like one of the coolest things about coaching and building out training logs is that it is so individualized. But it's really helpful for me to know what your what the goals are and what your values are, and making sure that we're like in alignment there, because that helps keep you motivated. And I can like remind you like, hey, these are your goals, these are your values, this is what we're working towards. And if we need to like break it down into, you know, there's like the foundation phase, the build phase, the peak phase, speed phase, there's all different sort of like blocks. Like we can do a hill block, we can do a speed block. Those are all very specific to the races that you choose to sign up for. So
I also have been thinking about the fact that some of these races have lotteries or sell out very quickly, and you need to make sure you're on top of that. And it's not always when you're thinking about planning your season out.
exactly. And that's something that's like where we think about these big races and goals like 3 to 5 years ahead of time, where it's like, okay, if Leadville is my bucket list 100-mile goal, I need to be putting in the lottery every year, because you can defer for a year, or you can get a chip if you do the Silver Rush, or there's like different ways to bypass the lottery. But there's also like, you kind of just have to be in the lottery and like keeping tabs of like when I need to put in for the lottery, when the lottery drawing is, all of those things. And then like for like Western states, you can run Western states qualifiers to get you into the lottery. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, but the logistics there are just like keeping track of what those races are, when to sign up, because even with the California International Marathon, it's already sold out. So like the next option for someone who would be trying to run that marathon who didn't get in before it sold out is like buying a bib off of someone through the Facebook lottery that opens on October 14th. And then like the logistics get crazy, because then you have to like pay that person for the bib, and then they pay the race organization for your bib, and then you're in. And it's very complicated, and like there's a lot that happens, but you have to kind of be prepared for that. But I think just being able to like adjust and stay flexible is probably the best advice that I can give, especially if we're thinking like big goals long term. You're gonna have a higher chance of hitting and like achieving those goals if you've got a longer build up to get there. So yeah, does that make sense? Cool. It's like I know a lot of these like bigger, longer races, it does get really complicated, because sometimes the lottery is like isn't always in our favor, and sometimes we get sick, or a big work project comes up and you can't leave for the weekend, or whatever it ends up being. So being really flexible and able to adapt and adjust is great. But when you have that like peak fitness and you're tapered and you're ready to go, and there's the only thing that's keeping you from racing is like a race cancellation, that's when we can like pivot and find something nearby or in the same area if you're traveling and make something work to get the most out of the fitness that you've built and still celebrate the work that you've put in. But I do love the idea, Ren, of like having a backup race for every race just in case. I think that's smart. I don't know if you need to do that for every single race, but definitely for the A races, just, you know, holding them lightly and being able to like adjust as needed. It's a good idea.
Trying to let go of all of our attachments, right?
Yeah.
So if something goes horribly wrong, there's something else to get excited about.
Yep, exactly. And it's very similar to like when we go into race day and it's like, okay, again, control the controllables, have like an A race goal, B race goal, C race goal. It's like A race goal might be qualify for Boston, B race goal might be run sub 3:30, C race goal might be just finish the race and have fun doing it at the same time. So it's very similar to that, where it's just like there's a lot of flexibility that goes into this whole process. That is frustrating sometimes, but I think it also has the opportunity to like help us show up in alignment with our values, and make us better people along the way. So, yeah. I will send this out as a PDF as well if you want to like use it, but I'll also write out the exercises if you want to use those with partners or friends, if you're trying to like plan races with someone else. So that's super important. Colin and I have to do that a lot. So makes it a lot easier to like have those conversations when you like have a structured way of having those conversations. So yeah. Do you guys have any other questions or any other like ideas? Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. I'm gonna get this uploaded, send it out in the email, but again, I'll be in the back of a car all day, so it might take a minute.
Safe driving back down to Tucson.
Thank you. I'm trying to like get heat adapted as I'm like sitting in the sun here sweating.